Hypothesis. What is it? How do I make one? And everything about it. Let's look at this. A hypothesis. By definition, a hypothesis, plural hypotheses, is a proposed explanation for a phenomenon. So when we are dealing with a hypothesis, number one is we have to be able to observe a phenomenon. As we observe a phenomenon, we come up with theories and concepts about it so that we can try and explain what is going on. In order to do that, we must be able to define the variables that are occurring in this. Whenever you look at phenomenon going on, there are always sorts of variables. You try and determine what is the variables, how do the variables work on this, and that's how we get a hypothesis out of it. You generate a possible explanation based on the variable. Stepwise process. Observe, define, generate. You can't define the variables, you can't define an explanation for it. So we generate a possible explanation based on the variables. This becomes very important because scientific hypotheses must be testable, which means we can vary the variables, we can come up with different things, we can test that particular hypothesis. And when we do it, we have to be able to control those variables. So we control the variables, we go out, we test the hypothesis, and then we can see whether or not the hypothesis makes any sense. Very easy process, so to speak. Let's come down with the one we don't want to deal with. It's the hardest one. This is called global warming. There are a lot of different ways to look at it. We're going to take this and we're going to break it down based on pure scientific hypotheses and see which way this goes. Global warming is the concept that since the Industrial Revolution, humans have been putting out a lot of carbon dioxide into the air. Carbon dioxide is a greenhouse gas. It is trapping heat, and therefore temperature is rising. The phenomenon that we see is over time since the Industrial Revolution, the average annual temperature on planet Earth has been increasing. At the same time, we are getting an increase in carbon dioxide. So the question is, are the two correlated so that one is actually causing the other? So in order to be able to do this, we have to be able to look at it. And we see the phenomenon, the temperature is increasing over time. Human activity is responsible for the increase in global temperature. And that's what it says. And that's what global warming is about. And that's where we've got to deal with it. Now, we say it's caused by greenhouse gases, right? Everybody knows that. So therefore, our variables are going to be greenhouse gases. So we have to deal with the most potent greenhouse gases and figure out exactly what are the most potent greenhouse gases. Now, here is your radiative forcing components. This was created by Leland McInnes at the English Language Wikipedia, and that's where you can find it. And it says in here, the radiative forcing greenhouse gases are carbon dioxide, methane, halocarbons to a certain extent, ozone, and oxides of nitrogen. It also says you've got stratospheric water vapor. You can have black carbon on snow. And there are a whole lot of different things. It shows that your net anthropogenic component is rather high. And that's the concept that makes global warming out there. Now, when we look at sources of greenhouse gases, and these are the greenhouse gases that it talked about. We've got different components. Number one component is water vapor. We have 12,900 cubic kilometers of water vapor in the atmosphere. It comes from evaporation of water vapor on the ground. Solar radiation deals with 90% of this. Evaporating material, because the solar radiation comes down and warms things up. Transpiration out of plants accounts for 10% of this. Net percent anthropogenic, almost none. It's cloud formation, and there is absolutely no way to control water vapor in the atmosphere as far as this goes for a study on greenhouse gases. We have got methane. Methane says it is found at 722 parts per billion. It is from decomposition and natural gas production. The amount of it that is net anthropogenic is 55%, and the 100-year global warming potential of it is 29. Carbon dioxide is 400 parts per million. Now you can see that that's quite a bit more than what you've got as far as methane goes. 1 part per million equals 2.13 gigatons of carbon. So we have got a tremendous number of tons of carbon. Where you get it from is respiration and burning, and it says the net anthropogenic amount comes out to about 350%, which is 14 gigatons a year. And basically what that means is that where humans go out, they create 3.5 times the amount of carbon dioxide in the air than would occur naturally if everything were allowed to go into equilibrium. Now, notice your anthropogenic warming potential, your 100-year global warming potential, is only 1. Oxides of sulfur, 1 part per billion, very little. Mostly volcanic in nature, some human. The net anthropogenic amount comes down to 100 times 10 to the 9th kilograms. If you look at that, that's about 1 part per billion. I mean, that's not much. But look at the 100-year global warming potential, 22,800. It's got a tremendous warming potential, however, doesn't have much there. Oxides of nitrogen, you're looking at somewhere between 10 and 200 parts per billion. It's going to vary depending on the location. You may get more of it in the city. You get a lot of it from human activity, a lot of it from lightning activity. The net anthropogenic portion of that is about 3/4. But again, look at what you've got. You've got a very large 100-year global warming potential. So when you look at this, what we see is that where a majority of these come from is carbon dioxide out of humans. Even though the 100-year potential is low, the volume that's put out is tremendous. Therefore, we've got a much greater potential out of carbon dioxide. So we look at carbon dioxide. It is the only one of these that we can control. It is the one that we are most responsible for as far as evolution into the environment goes. This is a diagram I like. It's from the U.S. Department of Energy, Biological and Environmental Research Information System. It shows you your carbon dioxide cycle. Now, what you're seeing in here is it shows you the various components. So up in the upper left-hand corner, it says atmosphere 800. That is the amount that you're going to find in the atmosphere. Photosynthesis is going to take out 120, it adds back 3. The yellows are take out, the reds are add back 3. Net terrestrial uptake is 3, it goes into soil carbon. Look at your pools in here. Your fossil pool is 10,000, your reactive sediments in the ocean are 6,000, your deep ocean is 37,000. That's where most of this stuff is stored. It shows that plant respiration allows a little bit back, but what you're getting is recycling of this material in there. Certain amounts come in, certain amounts go out. The net carbon increase, therefore, on an annual basis actually is human in nature. And a lot of it comes from fossil fuels and things like this. And if we stop doing these things, we could stop the increase in carbon release. But in order to be able to have a major impact on this, we have to be able to decrease the amount of carbon in the atmosphere. So when we start looking at global warming, what's our variable that we control? We got several variables we can't control, and the only one that we actually could control would be carbon. And the question comes down to how do we control carbon and how much of that would actually cause some sort of effect. So how do we test the hypothesis on here? That's your question. Because anytime you're going to do a good experiment, you have to be able to test a hypothesis. Empirical data says that this is reality. And just because you've got empirical data doesn't mean everybody agrees with it. And that's where we have problems as far as discussions about global warming and whether or not it is reality.